Don't ever accuse me of saying I said I want to do it. This was the preface to the whole thing. And
And he accused you.
well, didn't he just say something?
Yeah.
Steve, if I have
Again with the hand.
Speak up,
if
Dad.
I have eidetic imagery, if I see something,
Okay.
it's embedded.
Photographic memory, right. Right.
If I hear something,
can you wait a minute?
Yeah.
I have to for my profession, for my work.
Right.
You see.
Oh,
But
come
you gotta
on,
have-
Sid, you know
speak
you
up.
write down memos so you can remember.
Well, if I write it down, all I have to do is write it down. It also is written up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a problem living with someone who has an eidetic memory there.
Well, it thinks he does anyway.
Yeah.
That's even worse. But we have to get back to our subject.
In my Psych 1 course, I heard that word, eidetic imagery. I
Yeah.
loved it. I knew
Isn't
that's
it great?
what I had.
That's-
It has that.
Yeah.
Actually, and he also, there's not actual, this is interesting, there's not a correlation with intelligence to eidetic memory.
Thank you very much.
No. I mean, most people think you have to be intelligent. No, it's just you're born with it. And sometimes you lose it also as an adolescent.
As an adolescent.
This guy who I roomed with in college had both. He was one of the, you don't have to do this is serious now.
It's just sort of like, well, go ahead.
Well,
Let's get back to the 204th Street Medical Society.
Well, we were talking about something else when I went off to tell you about
yeah, what were we
whatever.
talking about?
We would talk. You wanted to know what my background was for the.
For protests, what kind of left you available to be...
Well, my background really stemmed from the fact that, Dennis, it stemmed from the fact that I said, as I said to you, I did not have the tremendous Jewish background, cultural background that most of my contemporaries had.
Why
Except
would that
that-
leave you
that-
more open to be liberal or
Right.
protesting?
If you had the Jewish background, you'd be more liberal.
Because
And the whole group.
well, they became communists, radically red,
Okay, but
which wasn't something I was
This is in
interested in.
your
You should have
family?
some sun cream on your face.
Radically red's no good.
Unless you're into
Radically red's my father's family, the Taplitz family. That's no
Radically
good.
red was very good until they discovered the inequities of Stalin. Until they found out Stalin...
No. I'm not saying it's good or
That
bad.
was when the problem started.
I'm not saying it's good or bad, but from the interpretation of my upbringing, radically red was no good.
I see.
Slightly liberal was okay.
That's good.
That's
So
right.
his side was bad, and her side
Well, he
was
had
good.
no use for his side,
Oh,
so he wasn't
there's only
sympathetic
one
to them.
little segment that was the red.
you got a little segment to say.
So crimson, it was a
He was
crimson
the first one
area.
that would say-
The others were intellectual.
He was the first one to say that they would turn their mothers and fathers in if they had to the communists.
Now, what do you mean intellectual? What was their background in...
You know, we have limited time. We have to touch base on everything. But I wanted to
I got to
say-
get my payment. I only worked for 3 hours straight.
Oh, is this? Are we on feed now?
You weren't told before you came?
Wasn't one of my first remarks?
You forgot. I
you
thought
weren't-
you had that
You
eidetic
weren't there
memory.
when one of the kids was showing me something. They're talking
You
about
only
the
thought.
dollhouse.
Yeah.
I said, and they said, "Mommy won it in the raffle." I said, "No, that's taxable income." Well, Joe broke up. He says, "You can take the boy out of the city, but you can't take the city out."
It's cute.
Anyway, one of the cousins,
Yeah.
there were two or three,
Now, where were they originally from?
on my mother's side.
No, but
From
where?
Russia.
Well, no, they're all born here, but their
And- but
parents
where-
were from Russia.
All from Russia.
They
That's
became
hilarious.
rabid Reds in
Uh-huh.
the event. Much of my growing up time period, and in our 20s when we got married and so on, they espoused the party line. And they would argue with statistics. Right away they would have the statistics to prove their point.
Yeah.
See?
So they read a
And
lot.
Stalin was great, and they subscribed to the worker and sent it as gifts to members of the family,
Right.
that sort of thing. There was a long lapse when we didn't see them. Just happened.
No.
And there was a family party.
Now, but where was this in New York? Was this in New York? They were all in Brooklyn. They were all in Brooklyn. Near Williamsburg at all?
No, in East New York. In any event, for someone who has lived there, you know a lot of the places.
Well, my mother grew up in Williamsburg.
Oh, I see. In any event, during this time period, Stalin was identified as being out of favor.
Yeah.
Beginning of that. And I met this one particular cousin, and he and I were at odds constantly. You know,
Who is this? Alvin?
Huh?
Alvin
no
or?
names, no names.
Oh.
You because he may know. But
Oh, yeah, well,
Why,
he's
do
in
you
Berkeley.
care?
Of course he knows him. He does know him. Tell you who it is, because
knows
I've
the
told him
person?
about him. Yeah, he lives in Berkeley. He knows him.
he knows the person.
He's a professor of political science at
Oh
Berkeley.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I've told you
Oh,
about him.
this
Yeah,
is
you
the
did.
guy
That's
that
right.
Sid, if Sid believes in capital punishment, it's because of this guy, and he would be the first one
Yeah,
to
he's the
put him
first
to
one
the
to go.
guillotine.
Really?
Guillotine.
That's
What?
how he feels
Now,
about
that's
it.
pretty
Tell me his
strong.
name. Just tell me his
The
name, because I
very
forgot.
No, we don't want to know
Oh, come on, seriously.
Marty.
Marty.
Yeah.
Marty with an L.
Marty Landau.
Landau.
Landau. Dr. Landau.
Oh.
You know who it is?
I
even?
think I could agree with you with capital punishment.
Anyway,
Martin Landau's
You
an
should've-
actor, isn't he? Isn't Martin
that's,
Landau?
yeah,
Different.
You're right.
He's
that's
an
somebody
economist.
else.
Another guy.
He's a political economist? Is that
Political
who?
science. He's
I
a
don't know what.
poli-sci
He was
professor.
an economics
Head of
major.
poli-sci at Berkeley.
I go to
Now,
college.
this is one guy that
I'm-
MacArthur should have gotten,
He's one of his
and he
patients.
never got him.
He goes, Steve's his therapist.
You're his oh, that's even better. That's not fair. We can't do that.
Anyway, I'm an accountant, and my thinking is entirely different from his, and we were at odds with each other over the years. We meet at this party, and now, as time passes, Stalin is in disfavor.
You're in your late 20s at this point?
This could be earlier, later, early 30s,
Okay.
whatever. I greet him, hadn't seen him for a long time. I said, Marty, you know, I've been listening to you over the years.
You haven't seen him in a long
And
time and you start off with Marty?
really-
Really?
I really
Only at family
were
parties.
finally, I was finally impressed with all the things he used to say, and I really got around to recognizing that Stalin really was the great guy that you've always said he was. But now I read in the newspapers that he was not the great guy. Can you explain it to me? So he turns around and
So you were
walks away.
provocative.
This is a provocateur.
Yeah. I bet he doesn't like you either.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
He turns around and walks away. That was the end of our conversation.
Really?
But my point was well placed.
But so why would you? Where would you get so much hatred for a cousin to be the
The
first
word
in
is
line to?
hostility.
Because-
I shouldn't tell it to you.
You want to know why?
Yeah.
On the occasion
It's
when
curious.
the
isn't
Supreme
it?
Court ordered, I think it was University of Alabama, to admit blacks.
Right.
On this occasion, we were all together. We happened to be all together at some family function. The family was very close in those years. And the TV is on, and we're all watching this scene of the federal marshal coming up to the governor and saying, in effect, Governor, it is my sad duty to ask you to step aside based upon this federal order
Right.
to allow so-and-so to enter.
We've seen that picture.
And when he finishes saying that, this string of cousins did, and now it's literal and I'm precise, you know,
Yeah.
eidetic imagery.
Yeah. No, I remember.
Blood is going to flow on the streets of Georgia tonight. They were thrilled
That's
to
how they
pieces.
sat there.
That's how
They really
they
did.
loved that scene. Blood is
Because
going
it was
to flow.
There
conflictual
was
and it would
conflict,
sort of
conflict,
show the system for
right.
what it was.
and they were going to be. Hey,
They were glorying
they
in it.
gloried in this.
Well, but that often isn't a reason why one hates or
Well, no,
has
who-
extreme
Who's
hostility
he
to.
saying it? I'm not saying
No, your
it.
wife said it. She said hostility. She changed my word
She
hatred
has
to hostility.
hostile. I'm not hostile.
Oh, you know.
I'm very loving, kind, and docile.
Yeah, I can see that right away.
Pat knows, right?
That's
Yeah,
something
shy
great
and
about hostility,
withdrawn.
yeah.
So how does this come back to the 204th Street Medical
I
Society?
don't know,
nothing
but we
to
were
do with
talking
it.
about capital punishment.
We were-
How
I-
did we get here?
Well, I'm always interested
I'd
in
get back to
histories. I love
204th
people's
Street Medical
histories, so-
Society.
Yeah, he
Really?
asked for history.
Yeah.
He wanted to know where my
Because
liberal-
he
where
brought
my
this out.
liberal
Do you got the
leanings came from.
It's a s-
batteries in here now?
It's the same kind of liberalism
As what?
that allowed you to be as eclectic as you described yourself before.
Which was? I don't remember what.
Well, when you were talking
See,
about
there I
the
don't
kind of
remember.
models that Grandpa
He
presented.
definitely was an individual. As a parent, I would almost say that he was at a level of parenting with me as the only child
Oh, you were the only child.
that would have taken another generation before the parents of that generation would have been as knowledgeable and educated. It's almost a generation difference.
You liked them a lot.
Who, my father?
Yeah.
I admired him. There were a lot of things I could find fault with if you want to listen to that too.
How much time would that take?
Oh, how much time do you want it to
I
take?
got about 15 more minutes on this one.
Not
and then we got to
really.
move to the
No.
204th
No, I have,
clinic.
but to get back
Just
to
gonna
the
get to it.
Iranian thing,
Yeah.
I have very, very strong feelings about religious
Fanaticism.
Religious fanaticism, and
What
the
do you
fact
think is a good
I've always
idea?
found it very interesting. And I think you asked my
What
background
do you think
Yeah.
is a good idea?
in order to understand my
Yes,
religion. I
yes,
think
yes,
that was
yes.
where we
At least
came
it's
from.
one-
Isn't
Yes,
that where we
exactly,
came from?
exactly.
I really
Let's
took
get
us
on.
back.
What have you had so
My
far?
religious leanings are such that they are not pro-Jewish because it's Jewish.
Okay, but don't
Right.
send me in.
I admire
No
the
sweets tonight, though.
cultural
I don't think we have
background of
any.
the Jewish peoples. I admire its history. But I have put religion, for me, into a particular place. And that is that religion was the only form of law and government when it was originally instituted.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing else. The fanaticism with which leaders utilized religion was for the purpose of having law and order. Now, with that very simplistic explanation, less than 15 minutes?
Yes, that's very good. That's the negative of your father?
No, not at all. He
That's
had
15
the same,
minutes for the
he had
negative
the
of your
exact,
father.
No, he had the exact same attitude. I think
Well,
that,
that explains why, Dennis, isn't dedicated to, religious Judaism. He never has been. I mean, that's,
both of my children weren't.
Yeah.
I went to a camp as a child from the time I was 11 years old because my parents only had the one child. They said they wanted to be able to give me everything. They didn't want to have a lot of children and not be able to give them the advantages of the special.
right.
So the camp I went to was run by a Catholic woman.
Hayley, go get your hat on.
90% of her campers were Jewish, and she had just started the camp. And after the first week we were there, the first week in camp, she had taken her half a dozen Catholic children to church for Mass on Sunday. And she didn't approve of the fact that 6 children were observing their religion and the other 90 were not.
Mm-hmm.
The boys' camp had all the pre-med students that were taken from the medical schools around or from colleges, and she got together 4 Jewish students and said, I want you to
It's
run
either in the
Friday
bathroom
evening
drawer
services for all the
Or
Jewish
up in your,
children
I think the
in the
bathroom
camp.
drawer.
It's Miss Casey.
Or Haley.
This was
Haley.
my background in how to
Oh.
live with people.
She's
It was
also lesbian,
never
though.
a
Haley.
background.
Important to know.
What'd you
Is that
say,
true?
Dan?
She was lesbian, wasn't she?
Yes, she was, but I didn't find out
I
until
think
you
it's
and Ronnie
in the
went to
bottom
the
bathing
camp.
suit
Alright.
drawer.
I never
Just-
knew it.
Might
Just
be.
an accidental thing.
It might be.
In fact, I didn't know it until the other one, Ronnie. Did you ever meet Ronnie, Steve? I only
no,
heard about him.
I've never met Ronnie.
Okay.
Ronnie
Ronnie
learned
the
it.
Rebel.
I have stories of Ronnie. But
I don't doubt it.
don't,
But I never knew anything about it until Ronnie the Rebel let me know how he felt about Camp Nokomis,
Yeah?
run by the lesbians, and I almost fell through the floor. And this was when I was an adult, and he was old enough to already know it.
Well, she was different, eclectic, and very forthright and honest. I think.
She brought me up with a very, very broad, non-biased,
I agree.
prejudiced
Yeah.
attitude toward people and religion.
I think that her
And I
se-
can find
her
no-
But that
sexual
was one of the
lean-
influences. Go ahead.
her sexual choice was probably also
Part of that.
a reflection of her eclecticism.
You're probably right, and it's only now that I can appreciate that that's so.
Right. I mean, when Ronnie presented it, he presented it in a very discriminatory, vicious way
Heck, absolutely.
because it met his needs. It
Well, she hurt his
reflected,
feelings.
yeah, it reflected his anger
she
at her.
insulted him, and
Right.
she hurt
He was
him,
humiliated
and
by her,
after
and
what right did she have to find him drunk and accuse him that
Haley.
he should drink and
Want
not
me
be
to
a
fix the
competent
ponytail so it'll
counselor to
fit
take
down
care of
better?
children?
Yeah, but that's-
She was absolutely right. I
but-
may be his mother, but she's
but
right.
in retrospect, it's that kind of anger,
That's right.
you see,
Yeah, but you want me to get your hat?
at a person who is basically an honest person,
Mm-hmm.
but who does a job that's an uncomfortable job. The response to that that job is a discriminatory response that is not different than the response to many gay people today who are bashed
Very
because
true.
people are angry about the jobs that they do that they have
You're
to do.
absolutely right, but the degree to which I admire her and what she
She's got shoes
accomplished
on, Eva.
is irrelevant as far as what her sexual preferences are concerned.
I agree. It may not. It may be relevant
And if
only
I had
to.
known it should
Well,
have been
it
relevant.
may be relevant only
How
to the
could you
point
be
that it was a
so
further
liberal?
example of her honesty.
That's a good
But my
question.
point is that anger that Ronnie has, or that Dad expressed before, or that you just expressed about the Iranians, is inherently discriminatory.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
That's what I was
And I
gonna-
feel exactly the same way now as I did an hour.
Even though,
yeah.
even though it may be that the Iranians in some ways represent the same kind of independent thinking and eclecticism that Miss Casey might have.
No way.
I understand
No
that that's
way.
uncomfortable for you, but
no
it
way. will I
theoretically
accept that.
may be
No, I
similar.
don't even think it's possible.
Well,
They are
They certainly-
fanatic religious beings.
they certainly don't
that
have that.
not exercised any intellectual thinking to become the masses of
Well,
non-thinking.
that may be
But
true.
do they have a right to exist? That's such a basic human right. That's what's so. That's
As
what
long
Dennis
as I
is
don't
saying.
They
They
have-
have confounding
they have-
your philosophy and liberalism and so many other.
They have the
areas.
right to be loved.
And you're saying
As long as they don't
Have a right
walk
to
the
love.
streets of Iran.
Right here. Hold on one second.
As
For
long
me?
as they don't,
Come.
as long as they don't walk the
Wanna-
streets of Iran.
Oh, do you want to hold this?
Condemning the Americans and saying what they say because
I was talking about that this period of history is the third time that it's happened when you've had the Republicans in office over a decade. That it starts off as a kind of middle class revolt and it's sort of the middle class getting more and ends up in a kind of laissez-faire for the very rich and a real raping of the economy and by the very rich. They were talking about the decade of the 80s being a phenomenal decade for a few people, and how it's really how we're going to have to pay for it in this next decade.
it was a fantastic decade for more than a few people, for a lot of people.
And the
Not a lot.
Republicans, interestingly
No,
enough,
there's a
are
little-
now attacking the Democrats and saying they are responsible for the S&L debacle.
Right,
It's so ludicrous.
right.
Well, Neil Bush was a good boy.
Yeah, it was.
What Reagan did in
Good
removing controls, removing auditors, eliminating all kinds of controls that could have existed.
38% tax rate. When's the last time you had a
Sure.
38% tax rate?
It's 28. It's 28.
State
there's
and federal.
one small segment where you think of federal.
Let's get back to health care. This economic,
this politics.
political stuff.
Dennis wants to
What are you
get.
trying to
He
push
wants to
me
get
into?
some of your
He wants to
history
get some of what
unfair.
I want to
on tape.
understand
He
the
wants
basis.
some of what I have to say on tape.
Yeah,
I
what's
want
wrong
the
with that?
stuff about the Medical Society of 204th Street. That was
we
a.
made very accurate diagnoses in our day.
You did.
We sure did.
Tell me, who did you see? What was that? I don't even know anything about it, so I'll ask the
204th
question.
Street Medical Society?
Yeah, no, I don't know what that
We
is.
were a group of people that lived in a
Brooklyn?
row of houses in Bayside, Queens, all of whom moved there at the same time. The development started all at one time. All of our children grew up together, and we all went through the development stages. I was one of the first to become a grandparent. And by the time we reached that point in time, we had all had a wide, broad experience in medicine. Whether it was from raising our children, or what happened when they had a cold, or when they had this.
Interesting.
Or, whatever
Okay.
it was. And whenever anything came up, we would speak to each other, discuss it, before we...
Before you talk to the doctor.
No, we always spoke to the doctor first and discussed
Who
it.
was
But
the
We went
doctor?
to the
Was the
chiropractor
There were
first.
different doctors.
Was the doctor part of this community? Did they
No,
live
he
outside
was
the
not.
community?
No, this community was not
Each-
financially
each
a
had their
community for a doctor.
first.
It was below.
Each had their own.
They each had their own doctors. Get back to what Denny wants to hear is this.
Yeah.
When the kids got sick, as far as my children were concerned, the doctor was called instantaneously.
Yeah.
When he said, put them to bed and give them aspirin, I called the chiropractor.
Now, what would the chiropractor do?
The chiropractor would re-stimulate normal nervous impulses. Now, you wanted to hear a definition of chiropractor?
Yeah.
Re-stimulate normal nerve impulses so that the body could take over and restore health.
And this was a
How
general.
much simpler can I make it?
That's wonderfully put. Okay, so
But is this
who
the
was the
204th
chiropractor in
Street?
this community?
He was outside the
Oh, we
community
had a
too.
few
Also-
different chiropractors.
They had a
It
few
wasn't
different
every
ones.
And the whole community believed in
No,
chiropractic?
me.
Just you.
Of course.
So you were the only one that had
some
the...
As far as,
accepted it.
She
as far
was
as
the
chiropractic.
204th Street
But you see,
Medical
what
Society.
happened was,
That's
no
it.
matter what was wrong with anybody, there was always a discussion. We were a group of 8, 10 of us, and anything medical was subjected to the discussion amongst us.
And one of the places that you would go with a medical problem would be, have you consulted the chiropractor yet?
No, I didn't ever recommend a chiropractor.
No? Not to
You
anybody
have to
else?
understand that
That was Mom's secret.
Oh, look at that. And here
This is our
is the
secret.
Leverett Pond chiropractice.
Chiropractress.
Chiropractress, yes.
have
One
baby.
more behind you.
Dennis,
My little hairband fell under the deck.
Did it? We'll have to go under and look for
And
it.
here is the chiropractress's assistant. Put the sunglasses on.
And your hat.
Wait,
put the hat on.
Quick!
Dad, don't Don't do
Okay,
it.
now
Wait,
drive up.
wait,
Drive
wait,
up.
wait. With the purple car.
That's great. Now drive up here behind the your employer. Now look up here. There you go.
Do you see my baby?
Yes, chiropractor's assistant.
Do
I
you,
s-
Daddy?
I see my baby.
No, your
Really,
baby.
this whole 204th Street Chiropractic Society.
My baby.
Now she's whispering now. This is the
Yeah,
time. We need to get
no
this.
fair whispering.
The whole 204th Street Chiropractic Society became a reality,
classic.
really, and talked about when Lori, our oldest granddaughter,
Yeah.
was at our house as an infant, and she developed a little pimple on her belly, and we diagnosed it
Never
as
heard
chicken
this story.
pox,
I love it.
and that was it.
You diagnosed it with chickenpox?
We called.
The chiropractor.
No,
And
no,
we refers
you're
to.
putting an emphasis on chiropractor.
it has
No.
no, it's not
Inapplicable.
not that
Okay.
important.
So
Not that
you
important,
diagnosed it,
except
and you were accurate in your diagnosis.
I am the 204th
Collective.
Street Medical
Yeah.
Society.
But the chiropractor is not important, even though that was the person who came to the house to provide the treatment.
That's a side
Well, the
issue
doctor
that's
had
not-
already given his treatment.
Oh, the
aspirin
doctor.
and bed.
Right, the doctor didn't do anything, so what are you going to do next?
Then I do what I want to do.
Right.
Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters!
Who are you gonna call?
That's
I
it.
never, I'll tell you, before Sid and I were married, he was very much concerned.
You don't have to whisper it, though.
I'm not whispering.
Oh, okay.
I always
He
think
always tells
something
me I'm
salacious is gonna come out. You know?
He always tells me-
Before Sid and I were together.
He always tells me I'm shouting.
Is that right?
Yes.
Did he mention that just now?
He's been a very good boy today.
No,
really.
yeah,
He hasn't made any comments at all to me today.
He's still trying to think of the argument for capital punishment.
Oh, is that what it is? Now, before we were married, he was very much concerned about my interest in chiropractic. And he was concerned about how it would affect our family, medical
Decisions.
decisions.
Sure.
And
Do you
I
think he
had
might
said-
have been worried about the scientific basis for it?
No, that was not the
No.
reason, Dennis.
No, I didn't think that could be it.
Scientific-
He's worried about he's gonna have to pay for another doctor. What is
Scientific reasons said chiropractic is not scientific.
So you weren't worried about it because you knew that that wasn't a problem. It was just
It just didn't matter.
outside. What were you worried about?
Hey, what is this?
No, go ahead. No, that's
Come
a
on,
good
go
question.
ahead. It's
That
a
is
good question.
Yeah, why did you want to make an issue about it?
There's quackery. It was way out. It was,
Oh, so maybe there was a little scientific question. Maybe.
Oh, a
I
pretty
said
apple.
Oh, okay.
I
But
said it was
it was
unscientific.
kind of denied, so it was unclear to me.
I said it was unscientific.
Yeah, he did say that. It was unscientific, and
Oh, you don't have a spot here? I think there's one on each of them.
Huh.
That's where
I
it's
see.
announced.
So you lost that argument.
No, he didn't.
I
Because
eventually recognized that it serves a purpose
Oh, I see. I see.
and has a very
Well, you know what I
meaningful
just did? I
purpose.
put some eye
in many
drops in my eye
situations.
first.
Yeah.
But also,
Cut this one.
Find
one
out, Edie.
cannot
Let's see.
This one.
have a
out.
Then we'll
particular
know if that's it or
condition
not.
or
Just
situation
don't touch your eyes.
that normally reacts favorably to
Okay.
chiropractic adjustment,
Yeah.
And then if,
And
and if
unless
you have
that
a reaction
person
this time, we'll know
goes
that we always have to put some
anticipating that it may help.
Like I
He's-
did.
It's not going to help.
That's
If he goes
And my
to the
David does.
chiropractor
Right.
with great reluctance
Puts
and
him in a
anxiety and concern,
yeah.
it's not going to do a bit of good.
Yeah.
Come here, let me put this on your
I,
arms.
I'm convinced of
You
that.
ready?
Yeah,
Put this
I
on
think,
too.
but that's truer for almost every medical
True.
professional.
But for most people, going to the doctor is a normal, customary procedure when there's an illness.
Yeah.
But to go to a
Now, is that
chiropractor
done?
is a little unusual.
Pretty good guess, huh? How you doing?
Who's this guy?
How you
This
doing?
guy just floats right up here.
interferes with our line of thought.
Yeah. Hey, let's get, hey, he'll be our
We got
first
you on
capital
video.
punishment.
No, I'm heading to the Iranians.
Just to use an example,
Wait, let me hear what this.
Somebody in the common schools, Dad?
No, it's Julia Hunter's dad.
Oh, now he's going off again.
Yeah. Well, it was a nice little reprise. A respite,
a
excuse me.
reprise.
Oh.
Yeah, whatever it
It's
is.
a reprise.
What does
Means that
reprise mean?
repeat
What is
In
it?
a show, in a Broadway
Reprise
show.
is a
Repeat.
Later
repeat.
in the show, when
It's
they
a
do
repeat.
one of
It's
the
an
earlier
encore.
numbers, it's like
Actually,
an
that was a
Okay.
translocution. I meant
Come on over,
a
sir.
respite, a nice change of pace. is what I meant.
Respite.
Well, thanks for correcting me.
But
So,
we want to make sure that the record is set.
Yeah.
yeah, well,
So what were you going to
it's
say?
consistent with the theme of scientific accuracy.
There are a
You
number
get
of
tired of me
situations
doing
over the
this.
years that we've been aware of a
No,
person
no, no,
who
no.
had
Just down.
Oh,
a
back.
serious bad twist. He went down for something,
Yeah.
and he just
Yeah.
can't
That's
straighten.
right.
He's in agony,
Yeah.
right?
Who are you
Should I
gonna
do your face
call?
too, even though it's covered by your hat?
And he
Just in
would,
case you want to take it off for a minute.
perhaps with reluctance, listen to the
Mommy,
comments that we
taking it
might
off
make
for a
and be
minute
willing to
won't
go
hurt
to the
it.
chiropractor.
Yeah.
but
And he would go
I think it's okay.
this way.
All right, and come out.
Out.
Right.
He said,
No,
"Believe it
you're
or
talking
not."
to a believer. I'm a believer in chiropractic.
Oh, come on,
chiropractic.
Steve. You're going to have to convince me that you're
Oh,
serious.
oh no, absolutely.
Are you
Abs-
serious?
Oh yeah, that's why I
absolutely.
was reinforcing it, because I know Steve sees chiropractic.
Yeah, well, I'm
Oh,
not
yeah.
always sure, Dennis. I'm exposed to a lot of people
Well-
that say these things facetiously.
Oh,
I
no,
realize
no,
you're a
no.
little untrusting of my attitude about it, but that's okay.
Not your attitude.
No.
Anybody's attitude, whether I'm listening to Ben
Rejected out of
Lieberman
hand.
or
Yeah, no,
somebody
no, no.
else.
Well, maybe that's the reason why you chose not to tell everybody in the 204th Street Society about the chiropractic choice.
Well, chiropractic to me was not something that I professed or
Might be a-
encouraged.
You
people
didn't.
with.
You didn't. What's the
I
word
had my personal
when you try and convince?
with a P.
Proselytize.
Proselytize.
Right.
I would always say to
Sounds-
somebody, I know what I would do if I faced the situation.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you to try it, and
Right.
I'm not telling you it's going to work. I mean, when they say to me, "Why?" I would do it because I will try it. I always do. And I would
See, on the
never
other
say-
hand, there are
No, I believe in chiropractic because I went. In fact, when in Boston, when my back first went out, the only person that helped was I had to go
You had
down
a
to
back problem?
Fitchburg, yeah, to this old chiropractor who was this town healer, and I was very
Yeah,
skeptical
the
at that
problem
point.
today, Steve, is that you can't find one of those old chiropractors.
I had one in Berkeley. She just died 2 years ago. She wasn't a chiropractor. She was an osteopath
Well,
actually.
all right, but at least she was practicing.
she was
95 years old
If she
when
was
she
a real
died.
osteopath from the old days, that was okay.
From the old
But
days,
today,
yeah.
the osteopaths are.
They're all
acting
MDs.
In the old
They're
days, you mean
frustrated.
the guillotine
Nowadays.
days, or
Nowadays.
oh, the First
95
World War?
years old. This woman was, oh, she couldn't have been 95. She was 90, I guess. She died, no, 89. She died. She was born in 1900s. And I was asking her, because you can tell I ask a lot of questions.
Yes,
you do.
provocative questions.
Very provocative questions. But I was asking her
Your
how,
provocations are only second to his.
yeah? But I forget that I was provocative. That's the,
You were just being open and honest. as I am.
the eidetic was something.
But sadly.
Wait, I'm telling you the story about my osteopath.
Oh, I'm
It's
sorry.
a very personal, that's how I got to know. So,
It's coming straight from the heart. and
I
you're
thought he had
interrupting.
finished on the subject of her age.
no. So I asked her, how did she get, I mean, it's not normal you see a woman in the field of, medicine in those days, and then to choose to be an
You
osteopath.
know what?
And her father,
Mommy put this
strangely
in
enough,
between
really
them.
convinced her to be an osteopath. And she went to UCLA
Did you
back
know?
in all, centuries ago. And it was really an interesting story because her mother actually was quite brutal to her, would physically abuse her. And she both needed a way out, as well as
You mean financially?
Take off your shoes.
A financial.
emotionally, some way to get out of the house
Oh.
emotionally and physically, as well as she learned the kind of problems that could occur physically when you're hit and you're tense. And she wanted to be a healer. She wanted to be helpful to other people, and it was one of the few avenues that she could
So she
see.
really was practicing osteopathy rather than practicing medicine.
Yes,
That's what
absolutely.
you're really
She
saying.
was an osteopath and very cranial osteopathy.
When Elaine said something about how come and so on,
Yeah.
you started to say, well, her father, I thought you were going to say, well, her father was an osteopath. In our town in Florida, there was a man who died only a month or two ago. He was 95, the same age as this woman. And he was so well, and everything was fine. And they were saying, how come? What happened suddenly? So the explanation was he had gone to California near Berkeley because his father was getting married again, and he got sick out there.
Jeez, isn't
Can
that
happen in
funny?
Berkeley.
Isn't that funny? How old was his father?
Well, he was 95, so
Yeah.
you have to decide for yourself how old the father was.
16 years older.
Getting married again at 100 and...
That's George Burns' joke, isn't it? The one about his father.
George Burns
He has to take care of his
gets
father.
up on the stage, and he's opening at Caesar's Palace. He says, just before I came on stage, they offered me a contract for 5 more years. I said, nothing doing. I'll give you a contract for 2 years. If you're still around in 2 years from now, I'll give you another 2 years.
Yeah, all those guys, boy, they were a generation of comedians, weren't they? Jack Benny, Bob Hope.
I'm trying to accumulate the radio programs, on cassettes.
Oh yeah? Really? Mm.
Did you hear about Nyla and the talent show?
What about Nyla and the Talent?
I have to try and get a tape. Nyla chose to be in the talent show, and
Doing what?
she told jokes. And I was anxious about it and concerned because when she told them to us, she hadn't really
Worked on.
worked on it.
She
And,
hadn't polished them.
and also, I was anxious because it played into a whole part of me that
That's-
I've sort of learned is fun, but really
Subdue it.
vulnerable and
You
not,
have to subdue it.
yeah.
True.
So Pat and I talked about it a lot, whether we had the responsibility to minimize this, to redirect it, and we both decided that it was important to let her go on stage, but I was very anxious about it, very concerned. This is about Nyla's jokes. And Pat worked with her on the jokes a little, and so did I a bit. And we subsequently found out that she was not only good at telling the jokes, but that she became the symbolic entertainer for the school and the narrator for the next 2 or 3 or 4 shows
You're
that they
kidding.
did.
The kids
And-
told her jokes all day to each other at this.
Oh,
And that
People-
people have
kept-
come up
adults
to
kept
us.
coming up to us.
People have come up to us since then.
And there was no taping of it?
Well, someone
Was,
taped
we
it.
haven't seen it yet, but-
I'm going to get a
Oh,
tape
I'd love
of it
to
for
see.
you.
Wouldn't that be nice to
Oh,
see?
I'd love it.
Oh, it'd be wonderful to see.
I have the tape of her practicing the jokes on this tape right here, and I'll show it to
Oh,
you
good.
before you leave.
Good.
I'm gonna show you
but-
one of. Wait.
What are you saying?
No, she's waiting
She
until
wants to
Dennis
see the
finishes.
joke.
Um.
Hales, can I
wanna
see
show
too?
you one of the jokes.
Sure.
See. This
Come over here.
man-
Show us over here.
See, this man is driving a car, and he runs over a cat, and then he decides to find the owner, and then he goes to a house, and he knocks on the door, and the lady opens it, and
Oh, I'm sorry.
and no, don't do it. And he said, "Have you seen a cat?" And she said, "What cat?" And then he.
You need some help with it, hon?
Can you tell me a joke? Yeah.
Yeah, she just takes time to remember.
I forget that part, so I'll go. Can I tell you the joke? Can I tell him the joke? No. And this is another part because I forgot the other part. This is
Okay.
And then she said, "What does it look like?" And he said, and then she said, "No, when before you ran over the cat." And then he said,
That's cute.
Very good, Hayley.
You want to tell one too?
Get the three
Go
of them
ahead,
with
you tell one.
sunglasses.
"I tell it the way it should be."
No,
Yeah, because
we don't go over people's jokes.
No,
I
tell
thought
us
that was
a
very
different
well
one.
done.
no, because I did a couple mistakes on it.
And we still enjoyed it.
It was a very good joke. I laughed at the end of it.
And you told it very well.
Hardly
also.
any mistakes also.
I still want Eva to do it again.
Okay, go ahead, Eva. You're on.
See, there's this man.
Yeah.
And he runs over a cat. And he says, "Well, I better go and confess." So he knocks on this lady's door across the street, and he says, "I just hit a cat, and I was wondering if it was yours." And she goes, "Well, what does it look like?" Well, what does it look like? And he goes, and she goes, "No, what did it look like before you hit it?"
Very cute.
Very cute story.
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah.
You said it.
This is another joke.
We knew what you were saying.
She didn't tell them.
See, there's these 2 little boys. One is named Shut Up and the other's named Trouble. And one day they both go to the supermarket to buy some stuff. And
We're not staying very much longer.
Say that again. Say it again, because I didn't get it.
You didn't get it? She said, do what you want to do, and then we're going to go. So if I do what I want to do and they go, I'm going to feel guilty.
That's right.
Yeah.
That was designed.
I just had one thing I wanted to say before.
Do
And
what
that
you
was,
want to do,
Dennis,
and they're
when
going to
you
leave.
started
That's-
talking about Nyla's entertaining. I just wanted to stress the fact that therein lies the power of the genes.
What? Tell us.
Period.
The genes?
If you can't figure it out.
Then you're in
Not
Oh,
trouble.
Nyla's entertaining the genes, the genetic predisposition.
entertainers.
Always what I have said. From
I
the
thought
very
maybe you were relating it to genes and the guilt and
No,
what
no, no,
Steve
no,
was
no.
saying.
That's another aspect of it. But the point is, the genes are all powerful.
Yes. The genes are all powerful?
All powerful.
I agree with that. Don't you agree with that?
I certainly do, but it's hard to find a lot of people.
You'll have
Well,
to
you and I
work.
disagree to, yeah, you and I will take different
You know,
stands.
Ina and I grew up on the
Will we?
opposite sides of
Yeah.
the thing on that.
Yeah. I
She
mean,
was the one
you
that
will give
always
too much
said
credit to
environment,
the
environment,
genes.
environment.
We did have this
Said
discussion
genes,
before.
genes,
Yes.
genes.
You wouldn't
There's
give too
the
much credit to
kitty.
the genes given what you've just heard?
Walking in the grass.
Maybe I should put it on playback and we can re-listen to what just happened.
I would give credit to the genes there, yes, and I would also suggest that these kids have been on camera ever since they were 3 months old, so being on stage is going to be something that you've also conditioned. I'm not sure that, you know, I mean, a
missed
behaviorist
my
would argue it.
I think you missed my point.
Oh, you mean I disagree?
That was the wrong answer.
Yeah, I
I
must
was-
have missed the point because I
I
didn't
was
give the right
talking
answer.
about my mother's comment, not mine.
That it was all genetic,
Right.
and you were saying,
And I was emphasizing the word all before genetic as a basis for modeling around the issue of how scientific genetic predisposition affect behavior.
can you talk English?
Not now.
No, no. You know,
I didn't exactly follow what he said.
yeah, you know, I mean, we're all having
What did
trouble
you say,
following
Dennis? Say it
you.
again.
I think
I was trying to suggest to
say it in
Steve
Yiddish. That's when my
that
parents used to talk.
occasionally we get into conflict over the fact that he feels that conditioning has a greater effect than genes. And my point is that a lot of the models supported in our family emphasize what you just
I
verbalized
disagree
eloquently.
with him.
That's the only point I was trying to make.
Oh, I see.
I wasn't
see.
talking about me so much
Oh, you're
as
talking about your mom's
the way.
predisposition to genetic interpretation.
Correct.
I got that. Okay.
I think that,
You have a real-
I think that your position, if that is your position on conditioning, is a good position, but I think that it's
I
a
don't know how
very
to-
much weaker factor than genes. An extremely weak factor.
I agree with you.
Oh, I thought you didn't.
No, but
From what
that's
Dennis
just.
said, I thought you did.
Well, we'd have to then talk about the specific case
Yeah.
Sit
or
down with it.
issue, and then we'd
Putting your
probably
fingers in front
disagree
of the
100% of the time. But I agree with you in
telephoto.
theory that genes are more powerful than.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, your mother.
Don't turn it
Although,
off
you know,
now. If you
there's
turn
an
it off, the
interesting
REC
thing.
will
You-
come
you-
off.
Where's the
do you
telephoto?
Remember what they call
2
the,
fingers.
The prisoner.
There's nothing there.
The guard prisoner study.
Those right
This was
there.
a fascinating,
Okay.
fascinating study. Because if the social
REC
psychologists
on?
try to study conditioning as a greater influence than genetics, right? What are you doing? You drooling on my finger?
No.
What is this? How come the finger got wet?
Like
Oh.
Give Steve a napkin.
sit
This
down.
professor at
Give him this-
Stanford.
Give him this napkin.
You want to tell me what to do one more time, then?
Oh, so young.
This professor at Stanford designs this this study where he's going to
In a minute,
arbitrarily
Eva.
take graduate students in sociology and psychology, and he's going to arbitrarily assign them roles. Half of them are going to be guards, half are going to be prisoners, right? These go from radical lefties to conservative Republicans.
Business.
whole group.
He's
The whole
assigned them a
group.
role.
Very
Yeah.
bright people, obviously, graduate students at Stanford. What happened was, which is an extraordinary conclusion, is that they got so into their roles. The guards became so sadistic and started beating up the prisoners, and the prisoners began to fight among themselves that they had to stop the study. But the conclusion of that was that in spite of the genetic influences, that roles create a much more powerful effect than and
Very
social
interesting.
conditioning. is
That's
much
a
more
very
powerful.
interesting. And there was another thing that was done similar to that in a girls' school, where they gave roles of the rich girls and the girls who were their slaves, and they
Oh,
did
yeah?
worked out a whole study along the similar principles and how vicious the rich, wealthy, the girl that was given
Yeah.
the role, as
Yes.
compared to the one she made a slave.
Right.
It was I don't know where I got it
There was
from.
another one which showed the roles also, which is very. This is the Milgren, Pat Milgren.
Yes,
Milgren
Milgren.
studies in Michigan, University of Michigan. They just took students at random, and the professor said that we want you to turn on the shock
Oh yes, I
level
heard
of
it.
intensity
Yes.
to the degree that we ask you to, and there's someone behind that will be shocked, and they will.
Somebody's
this one
gonna
is
receive
lethal,
that shock, yes.
and they'd hear the screams, And they just obeyed.
They did what they were told to do.
They obeyed.
They did.
That's very frightening,
It is frightening.
but
Your
fascinating.
answer to Nazi
Yeah.
In a simple way, that's the story of the bridge over the River Kwai.
Hi. Kyla was sleeping.
Really?
She wanted to come down and spend some time. She was very disappointed that she fell fallen asleep. So she's going to come out soon.
When they discovered it,
So
it
you
was
just
a
want to get away from
colonel
the
of
hardcore.
they had to build a
Just
bridge
talk
over
to
the
her
River
for a
I will
Kwai.
be happy
They
to.
assigned the job to him, and the laborers were the other prisoners.
Mommy,
And he did the job with such
put
intensity
it at me.
because his training is, hey, he's going to build
Hey.
the best bridge possible.
Right.
And
Let me see you without your
he
glasses a minute.
built the best bridge possible. He brutalized the soldiers
You're
and so on,
a sweetie.
in the same sense of the word.
Right.
But this was brought down to elementary terms.
Oh, that's a
that the
cutie,
layperson
too.
could readily
Yeah.
see.
Told you this wonderful story.
Hi.
Pat,
We just saw the, did you see that movie? Did you see that? Did you
It was a
see that?
success.
Put it at me for a minute. Mommy, put it at me for a minute.
Look at the image there.
Mommy, I'm over here. Mommy, put it at me for a minute. Mom, put it
Oh,
at
did you
me
see
for a
that?
minute. Put it at me for a minute.
She was left out.
I'm sure you can figure it out.
How are you doing?
Well, she was left out of it.
Did.
Well, she was.
Don't look at me.
Why not?
Kyla,
Don't be driving back.
would you do me a favor here? You may have to get up a little
While you're
bit.
sitting.
What I wanted to hear what you thought was your best joke, because they don't have the tape yet, and I really wanted to see